January 31st, 2026. In the exclusive silence of Tucson's Catalina foothills, the desert night is supposed to be a sanctuary. But at a quiet residence on the edge of the mountains, a digital ghost is moving through the shadows. A man in a mask approaches a front door. He doesn't knock. He doesn't hesitate. With surgical precision, he severs the home's connection to the outside world, plunging the security system into darkness. Hours later, miles away, a technician notices a chilling anomaly. At 2:28 a.m., a medical pacemaker, the electronic lifeline for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, misses its scheduled signal. It is the silent scream of a woman who has vanished into the night. By sunrise, the house is empty, but the porch tells a violent story. DNA-confirmed bloodstains mark the stone steps. Nancy Guthrie, a woman who could not walk 50 yards without assistance, is gone. What followed was one of the largest manhunts in Arizona history, pulling in the FBI, Border Patrol, and local investigators into a labyrinth of Bitcoin ransom notes and desert dead ends. Was this a calculated hit on a famous family, or a predator striking a vulnerable target? Tonight, we deconstruct the evidence, the timeline, and the terrifying mystery of a life erased. This is Gone Without a Trace, the Nancy Guthrie story. The story begins in the shadow of the Santa Catalina Mountains, in the affluent enclave of the Catalina foothills north of Tucson, Arizona. Here, the desert is beautiful but unforgiving, a place where the silence of the night is rarely broken by anything more than the call of a coyote. On the evening of Saturday, January 31st, 2026, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie moved through her final hours of normalcy. Nancy was a woman of routine and deep-seated faith, a grandmother whose life was rooted in the quiet dignity of her community. To the world, she was the mother of NBC's Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. But in these foothills, she was simply a neighbor. At 5:32 p.m., Nancy stepped into an Uber, headed for a weekend dinner at the home of her daughter, Annie Guthrie, and her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni. It was an evening of family warmth, the kind that defines the Guthrie legacy. The dinner concluded just before 10 p.m. Tommaso Cioni drove her back to her residence, watching from his vehicle as she entered the safety of her home. Security logs confirm the garage door hummed shut at exactly 9:50 p.m. Cioni was observed on neighborhood surveillance driving away moments later. For the next 4 hours, the house sat in total darkness, a silent sentinel in the desert. Investigators now believe that during those 4 hours, Nancy Guthrie was being watched by eyes that knew her schedule better than her own family did. In the modern world, we are surrounded by a digital web designed to protect us. Yet in this case, that web provided only a record of a tragedy. The investigation hinges on a chilling sequence of automated logs. At 1:47 a.m., the home's Google Nest doorbell camera, the property's first line of defense, was manually disconnected. This was no technical glitch. FBI digital forensic teams later bypassed the physical damage to recover data from the cloud. The footage revealed a terrifying sight. A lone individual, masked and gloved, moving with the clinical precision of a professional. The suspect was armed, and he knew exactly where the camera's blind spots were. The intrusion deepened at 2:12 a.m. when internal motion sensors flared to life. The intruder had breached the sanctuary of the home, but the most haunting piece of evidence is biological and electronic. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's bedside pacemaker monitor attempted its nightly transmission to her medical providers. The signal failed. The The missed heartbeat of the machine suggests that by 2:28 a.m., the room was empty, or the technology that kept Nancy tethered to her doctors had been violently compromised. In that 16-minute window between the breach and the signal failure, the life of Nancy Guthrie changed forever. The desert sun rose the next morning on a house that looked perfectly normal from the street. But inside, a nightmare was unfolding. Nancy was a pillar of her local church, and her absence from a virtual Sunday morning service sent immediate ripples of concern through her congregation. By 11 a.m., worried relatives arrived at the property. What they found shattered the Sunday morning peace. The house was in a state of uncharacteristic disarray. Most disturbing was the discovery that the back doors, leading out into the vast, open desert, were propped wide open, as if to let the heat of the day in and the evidence out. At 11:56 a.m., the official missing persons report was filed. As the Pima County Sheriff's deputies moved through the home, the grim reality set in. Nancy's essential lifelines, her purse, her mobile phone, and even the walker she relied on for mobility, were all left behind. On the front porch, investigators found the physical signature of a struggle, dark red stains on the steps. Within 48 hours, forensic labs confirmed the worst. The blood belonged to Nancy Guthrie. The spatter patterns told a story of violence, suggesting Nancy may have been struck or fell during the abduction. On February 2nd, the case was officially reclassified as a criminal kidnapping. As the FBI moved in, they began the painstaking process of building a profile of the predator. They analyzed every frame of grainy neighborhood footage, looking for a ghost in the machine. The suspect is described as a male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches, but it is his equipment that haunts investigators. He wore a black Ozark Trail hiker pack, a common item, yet in this context, it became a vessel for a crime. This was not a crime of passion, it was a crime of logistics. 2 miles away from the Guthrie home, a breakthrough seemed to appear in the form of a discarded glove. It was a match for the style seen in the security footage. However, the forensic promise of the glove turned into a dead end when DNA testing failed to produce a match in CODIS or any federal database. Parallel to the search for the suspect, authorities had to perform the grim task of clearing the family. Sheriff Chris Nanos took the rare step of publicly clearing Savannah Guthrie, her brother Cameron, and her brother-in-law, Tommaso Cioni.
We're actively looking at everybody we come across in this case. Everybody. We would be irresponsible if we didn't talk to everybody. The Uber driver, the gardener, the pool person, whoever, everybody. It's so cliche, but everybody's still a suspect in our eyes. That's just how we look at things and think as cops. Does that mean we have a prime suspect? No, and the family's been very cooperative. They've done everything we've asked of them, and we want that relationship to continue. And sometimes people can be mean out there, and that can really harm us and harm our efforts.
They were victims of a different kind, forced to grieve under the microscopic glare of a global media frenzy, while the real predator remained a shadow in the desert. The investigation took a sinister turn when the silence was broken not by a phone call, but by a digital demand. Media outlets began receiving cryptic communications. One note, scrutinized by federal profilers, demanded a staggering $6 million in Bitcoin. The use of cryptocurrency was a calculated move designed to exploit the anonymity of the blockchain. What made this note credible was the inclusion of insider details, specific descriptions of the clothes Nancy was wearing that night, details that had been withheld from the public to protect the integrity of the case. The Guthrie family, desperate to bring Nancy home, raised the reward to an unprecedented $1 million.
Welcome back. Well, the family of Nancy Guthrie is now offering a $1 million reward for any information leading to her recovery.
Lee Waldman has the latest.
I'm coming on to say it is day 24 since our mom was taken in the dark of night from her bed.
As law enforcement is working on the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, her daughter, Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, is offering up a reward for her mother's recovery.
We are offering a family reward of up to $1 million.
This is in addition to the FBI's $100,000 reward for information about 84-year-old Guthrie.
We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us.
Yet, as the weeks turned into months, the investigation hit the wall that all kidnapping cases fear. Authorities tracked leads across the international border and into the deep web, even arresting an opportunist in California who tried to scam the family.
We are also learning a man with ties to Los Angeles was arrested and charged federally for allegedly contacting relatives of Nancy Guthrie. According to court documents obtained by Fox 11 just yesterday, Derek Calleja is facing federal charges over allegations of reaching out to Nancy Guthrie's relatives, asking about the ransom.
But the true captors remained silent. The investigation became a war of attrition, pitting high-tech federal resources against a kidnapper who seemed to understand the limitations of modern surveillance. As we reach May 1st, 2026, the case of Nancy Guthrie has become one of the most significant unsolved abductions in American history. The media vans have pulled away from the Catalina foothills, but the work continues in quiet laboratories. Specialized forensic facilities in Northern California, the same experts who cracked the decades-old Gilgo Beach cases, are currently processing minute fibers and DNA samples pulled from the Guthrie home. Every day, the desert wind sweeps across the porch where the struggle occurred, slowly erasing the physical memory of that night. But for the Guthrie family, and for the investigators who have made this case their life's work, the clock is still ticking. They are waiting for one mistake, one slip-up in the digital trail, or one witness to finally speak. Until then, the grandmother from the foothills remains a ghost, a story of a life interrupted, and a mystery that continues to haunt the heart of the American Southwest. As the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie enters this quiet, grueling phase, the authorities are making one thing clear. The smallest detail could be the key that finally unlocks this case. A hiker who saw a black backpack in the brush, a neighbor who noticed an unfamiliar vehicle idling in the Catalina foothills, or a digital footprint left on a local network. No piece of information is too insignificant. If you have any knowledge regarding the events of January 31st or the whereabouts of Nancy Guthrie, you are urged to come forward. You can contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI's tip line. Your anonymity can be protected, and with a $1 million reward on the table, your courage could not only change your life, but bring a mother home. The story of Nancy Guthrie is far from over. As we sit here today, forensic teams are still analyzing data, and investigators are still chasing shadows across the Arizona desert. This has been part 1 of our deep dive into a case that has redefined the meaning of gone without a trace. But the silence will not last forever.
We still have hope. And we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is, that it's never too late.
As the investigation moves into its next phase and the police work toward a final conclusion, we will be here to document every breakthrough and every revelation. To ensure you don't miss the next chapter of this developing story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We will return for part 2 the moment the investigation reaches its end. Until then, keep your eyes open.